Okay. So, hello everyone. Today we are going to do our first sew along on the Fabricat, and I am very honored and very excited to have with us Libby Christensen. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, awesome. Libby, she is a great creator. She has a website with all the patterns that she has created. She has won a lot of prizes with her quilts, the quilts that she designed herself. Libby, do you want to tell us a bit about that? I know you don't like to speak too much about the prizes that you won, but can you tell us a bit about the shows, the contest that you participated, the prizes that you won? And tell us a bit about yourself as well. Where are you coming from, and what did you do, and how did you come to be this awesome designer that you are now?
Well, I don't know if you can hear me yet. Is it? Am I
Yes,
live?
yes, yes, yes. We can
Okay.
we can hear you.
All right. Well, I actually have been sewing since I was about 4 or 5 years old. My mother was quite a seamstress. She was extremely petite and could not find anything her size to wear. So she had to learn to sew, and she then taught me to sew, which was just wonderful. And I actually worked teaching English in high school and then about 6 or 7 different colleges for throughout the years, and I enjoyed that a lot. But when I retired, I really wanted to get back to my creative side, and I really love fabric and love sewing and love designing. I would say I'm not so much of a quilter as I am a designer. And right now, I show at several places. There are different art communities around the South Alabama where I live, and I show in all of the art shows that I can. I've sort of made it a personal challenge to try to get to as many art shows as I can reach and take fabric art, because I think that's something that's been overlooked. They sort of think, oh, a quilt is something that my grandmother used to make, and they don't realize all the new things. So I've got a lot of art quilts that I do, but I also do my designing for my patterns on my sewgocreate.com. That's SEW, go create, one word. Those patterns I try to make.
I'll add the website
Yeah.
to the comments so
Yeah.
people can see
And
that.
so I'm always making new patterns for my website, and I have a few quilts up for sale in the town of Wetumpka that I'll tell you about a little bit more later.
Okay, that's awesome. I know you have a show. You are going to do a show later this year, or at the beginning of next year. Is that correct?
Oh yes, in Montgomery, the Annette Fulmer Gallery in downtown Montgomery has got me signed up for a show in January. So if you're in Montgomery, come look me up. Wetumpka is where I live. It's just north of Montgomery. It's just a small town north of Montgomery.
Okay, that's great. So I think we can start now. I will get out of the screen. I will be on the back office, looking at questions and taking care of everything, and I will give you the stage.
Okay. I'm Libby Christensen, and as I said, and let me tell you just a little bit about where I'm coming from. And in the meantime, what I really want you to do is type in where you are watching from. The reason I really want to do this is that Fabric Hut is so exciting because there are so many quilters from literally all over the world. I know I've seen some from Canada and all over the United States. And we have quite a few in Australia. So we're really glad to have them. And anybody who comes in and can speak and read English, we love to have you. And you might even be able to see it translated on your computer. Ricardo is very good at asking really fun questions, and we all get to answer them and that look at each other's answers. It's a really fun thing to do. So I started just in Fabric Hut, just sharing my thoughts and ideas and pictures of my quilts as I was making them and things like that. Now, while you're typing in where you're from, I am going to tell you that I'm from Wetumpka again. And if you're thinking, Wetumpka, what is that? Then that means you may not have watched HGTV's Town Takeover, because the hometown takeover done by Aaron and Ben Napier last year was of Wetumpka. So some of you may have watched that. No, I was not part of that, but I know a lot of people who were. And I've got to say that Shelley Whitfield, who owns the Big Fish House, actually has a quilt that I made of the Big Fish House. Let me say the Big Fish House was where they formed. It was Tim Burton who produced that, oh my goodness, a few years back. So it was actually filmed in Wetumpka. So that's where I'm coming from. Let me do just a little commercial here for Wetumpka. It has turned into really a bustling little tourist town since they renovated it. We have lots of cute boutiques. Oh my goodness, I'm very high participant in an art gallery there. I usually have quilts up in the art gallery, but also we have, oh goodness, clothing shops and oil and vinegar and wine and cheese and the market shops where the We Too hat came from. And I'm in that too with my photography. And then you've got to stop at Poppy Lane. Poppy Lane Vintage has a booth with some of my quilts. So speaking of quilts, let's get down to the real reason I'm here today, and it is to introduce this new quilt. You'll come over here with me. Take it down a little so that you can see the whole thing. Okay, this quilt was a challenge that Ricardo gave me. He said, please design a quilt for the Fat Fifths that the Fabric Hut sells. They sell these wonderful little collections, as you see, different colors and little groups of things. But what I did was I chose this one. And as you can see, it's rainbow colors. You can't even see what this is, just a few of the scraps that are left. But you can see it's just a really wide variety, 35 different colors. Now, what is a Fat Fifth? If you look here, down here, you can see I've got one laid out. Let me take one that's not here. Maybe you can see it better. You see, it's almost like a Fat Fourth, but it's 40 by 50 centimeters. And it is about 15 by 18 or 19 inches long. So you actually can do many of the things that you do with the other Fat Fourths, but just a tiny bit smaller. Now, I did this particular one because I just loved all these colors. And when you looked at these colors, there were a whole lot of different pinks and greens, a few blues. And when I looked at that, I saw flowers. And that's exactly what I did. I decided with my bundle of, it's called the Telas or Telas bundle, Telas bundle. This is right now on thefabric.com on sale. And with this bundle, I was able to make this quilt. But as a bonus, with the scraps, I made this one. And I included both of these in a pattern, which I've given to Ricardo, and anybody who buys the bundle will get both patterns. Now, when you look at this, you see what seems to be just this huge myriad, difficult, complex blocks, but that's not true. It looks complex because of the colors. It's actually really fairly easy. I'll show you why. When I design, I'll use the black. As I said, I'm a photographer too, so I always have mat board. If you look here, and I don't know if you can get any closer than that, but if you look here, that's one block. This is the same block. This is the same block. That's one simple block. It's 4 pieces and then the 4 center pieces. But I also have that block in the more complex blocks. And let me show you that, because this is the real. Here you go. Right there, you see one of the big blocks. There are 8 big blocks and a total of I'm forgetting now, I think 20, let's see, 10, 20, 28 small blocks. But the small block is actually part of the big block. So once you get the small blocks made, you then put them into this big block. Now, part of the complexity comes with how I set these up. So if you look at this block, you'll see up at the top, right there, I'm pointing to it, is a flower. But look at the next block. Same block, different colors. And now look where the flower has gone. It's gone from the left now to the right-hand side. So I've rotated it. Now go down here, next block, same block, different colors. And now look at the flower. It's right here. I rotated again. And finally, over here, same block again, and now the flower has been rotated again, or you might say it's counterclockwise from the top one, bottom one. So you have to kind of follow this block to that part of the block to kind of see which direction you are, but it's not that hard. But what happened is when I put it all together, those corners make the bigger flower. So I have the small flower. I'll try to reach one that's not quite so high for me. I'll have a small flower in the corner, a medium flower, then one corner of the big flower. Small flower in the corner, medium flower, and one corner. Then on the sides, the small flowers, 10 on each side. So it looks complex, but it's not, because you've got these big blocks in the middle and then the little blocks on the side. Now for a pattern to make it easy for you, the first thing I did was I took all of the colors and numbered them and named them. Let me tell you, this is the hardest part of the quilt. It's not about the sewing. The sewing is pretty straightforward for quilting. It's about the keeping track of the colors. And it got to be a little interesting because we had pink and pale pink and light pink and peachy pink and hot pink. So it got to be very interesting. I love the gradations of colors. They really make for a beautiful quilt. One time I went to a lecture by Jenny Beyer, and she said that she had found that most people prefer quilts that have lots of different fabrics, lots of different prints, lots of different colors. That seems to appeal to people. And I don't know if that's scientific or not, but if it is, this one uses 27 colors, 27. Now, how do you keep this all straight? Well, it's a long pattern. My patterns are not usually, this one ended up 17 pages because it's 2 patterns. They're not usually this long. And by the way, this comes over the computer to you as a file, as a PDF file. And what you actually do is you take that file and you just print it. So make sure you have plenty of color ink. Now, if you look though, to make it easy for you to sew, I actually have put these graphs, and these graphs are what keep you sane. You're going to look at the graph and get your colors ready. And if you can't tell exactly what color it is, you don't have to worry, because I also have the colors and numbers listed on the side. So I've tried to make it as easy as possible. Every big block is listed individually. So you will be able to follow this very easy. It's not that hard. But now I want to go to some of the follow along tips and techniques. I don't think you really want to watch me sew for the next 10 hours or so making a quilt, but I am going to give you a few of the tips that I used as I was making this, starting with some cutting. Now, I've got to tell you, there are a lot of things about cutting that people can tell you. One of the most important things is when you're trying to cut, you want to keep a couple of your fingers, or at least one of your fingers, off this the ruler, so that you can anchor it. So like I can put my thumb and finger here and then kind of hold this and hold it in place so that when I cut, this doesn't move. I got to tell you something that I do, and this is probably a little bit crazy. Don't know if I'm really set up here, but I'll show you what I do. First, I've got to go back. I missed something I wanted to say. When you get ready to do your quilt, I also have the colors listed for you in a way so that you can say, okay, these blocks take, say a blue one here takes light blue, medium blue, pale blue, and sage green. What you want to do is sort those out first when it comes to you. Then what I do is I put those 3 or 4, whatever colors they are, together, and I clip them with these little wonder clips. Fabric.com has these as well, fabrichut.com. Get them. Their prices are good, and these are really helpful. I tell you, they really help on the binding. But I found that it was easiest to actually clip these so that I could keep together the colors I needed. Now I'm ready to cut, and what I normally do myself is this. I put my whole arm down. Why? Because I've got bad back. It hurts to stand. So, I sit when I can. But if I put my arm down, I found I can really hold it. And if you've got a good rotary cutter with a fresh new blade, you're not going to have any trouble cutting. That's the key to cutting. You've got to have that fresh blade. Titanium blade by the fabrichut.com is the best you'll find. I've not found any that are any better, and it's the cheapest you'll find. They run specials all the time. Get yourself plenty of blades. That's important when you're doing this kind of cutting, because you can cut several layers at a time, no problem. Boom. Now, I cut that edge off. Actually, I think I want to cut a little bit more off. Let me do that again, because I noticed it has a very, very delicate selvage. These fabrics are interesting. They're silky. They're lighter weight than a lot of quilt fabric, and they're silky. They have a nice feel to them, but they are pretty tight thread count, so they're good for quilting, and they're not too sheer. They do have a little selvage, but it's not very big. I'm just going to cut that off first. Now, the reason you want to cut it off first, even if it's not a selvage, is you want to make sure those are all lined up exactly perfectly. It's just so important when you're cutting to get that lined up. Let's see, I'm going to push some things away. And now I really need flip it. I know some people have little roundabout things, but this would be too big for one of those. I'm going to flip it and go with the 3.5 inch cut. Now notice I didn't even have to check what size, because every square on here, except the little tiny, there's some little tiny yellow squares. Every other square on here is 3.5 inches. That's another thing that makes this really fast. And it's going to cut so fast that you know, it's pretty amazing. Okay, I went through 4. Whoops. I just did something that makes me mad. I should have left this in place. And what you should do, here's the tip. I tell people, don't do as I do as I say. And what I say is just to make sure you've got it before you move that fabric. There you go. It's just one. Sometimes that happens even with a good blade. Sometimes you just lift it a little bit. Now, I can move that away, I think. No, still got one. Okay, sorry, Ricardo. I didn't do a good job of showing off your great blades. They really are good, and I'm embarrassed that I did that. Okay, but my tip there was move the outer fabric first, keep this in. Now what I'm going to do, I don't actually have to put this on. What I really need to do is just do another little bit here. And I didn't bring my sticky notes in, but that's another tip. You can actually put a little sticky note here, little bitty one. And then that way you know exactly where you're going to cut. You don't have to search for it every time. And I'm sorry I had those out and somehow they didn't get in here. Okay, let me try again. One thing people do when they're cutting is they kind of don't press in, and you really do have to press in. But see how easily I now have all of these cuts, and I'm going to put them all together and want to stack them up nice and neatly. I'm going to be done with this for the moment, and I'm going to go to this. Now, this is my, let's see, it's called a June Taylor shortcut. I know that's hard to see, but it's a June Taylor shortcut. There are other ones. This just happens to be one I've had for probably about 20 years. Let me just tell you, in fact, I think I saw one, to tell you the truth, I think I saw one in Walmart. I don't know. So there are other brands, but the whole point is it's got all of these lovely, lovely lineups here. So you can, I think I will. So turn it around this way. I can read the 1, 2, 3. Now, can you see that? Can you tip the camera a little bit to see what I'm doing here? Tip it back from the bottom. Yeah, I don't know if you can see. What I'm going to do is I put it a little past the 0. And I'm going to cut that off again just to even off that side and make sure they're all the same. And now what makes it so good, I've got 8 pieces here, and I can do this. 3.5, and then 7. You got to do your addition here. And let's see what we've got here. You could continue on down. You can actually get 5 of these along here. But look what happens. I've got all of these beautiful cuts, and if you use the ones that were from that particular block, you take these, you can, well, I just stack mine up. But if you need to, you can put this in a little plastic bag and you can label it blue flower, or in this case, green polka dot flower. Okay? And that is a really, really good way. Get these all cut, put them in a little plastic bag, or put them in a pile. So that is my cutting. And you don't have to have one of these, of course. If you're a big quilter, I would recommend it. They're kind of pricey, but put it on your Christmas list because it's a good thing to have. Now, what I want to do is take some of these and I want to get them marked because I want to do some sewing. And the first thing I want to do is make you a half square triangle. Okay, quilters, I know. You probably all have done half square triangles. And I know that what I have to say may not be new to everybody. Just bear with me because I'll move on to other things. When you're doing a half square triangle, you've got your 2 squares. And these are my 3.5-inch squares, a couple that I had left over. And what you're going to do is go from corner to corner, and I'm going to mark a line. That looks like a pen. You don't want to use a pen on your fabrics, but this is a special pen. This is a friction pen. Now, I think a lot of quilters know about these already, but if not, this is made by Pilot. It's not a special sewing thing at all. I actually got mine in Office Depot. They're called Friction. That's with a Fricks with an X in it. They are gel pens that are erasable. And I'll show you over here. Sorry, I have to move this. What I mean. It's hard to believe this, but you make a mark and you know you can't really erase. You really can't erase pen marks. Well, these are amazing because I erased it. What they were made to do is the friction, that's why they're Friction. The friction of the eraser is the heat, takes that off. Now, what that means for quilters is that an iron takes it off too. So that is, these are fabulous, a new thing for quilters that it wasn't even made for quilters. Another thing that I have found in the past, I don't know, in the past 20 years, I did not know about this when I was growing up. And I just wanted to mention it because if I didn't know about it, there may be others who didn't. This is actually tailor's chalk. Now, maybe your quilters already know about it, but I didn't. And there you go. I just made a mark with this. It looks like chalk. It's not. It's kind of a waxy substance. I would check it on some fabrics, but see, it works on, this is actually a dark green, but it works on your dark fabrics, navy, dark green, dark black, gray. So if the pen won't work, your other choice is this. And both of them, it's really amazing because both of these are going to disappear with the iron. And we're going to head over to the ironing board and sewing machine now. And I'm going to make this half triangle. It's not really a half triangle, it's a square. Okay, see if I can get myself up to the machine. This is not where I normally sew. But we tried to set it up so maybe my photographer here can get in here and actually watch. Since sorry, and I'm making a mess here. All right, I'm just going to sew right along that line. Yeah, I do. Not all quilters do a little back stitch. I like to. I'll show you another tip. I've got scissors here on elastic. I've got to tell you that one came from Kathy Quilts. When she's quilting, she likes to have her scissors on a big long piece of yarn or something. And I took her one better and I put it on some elastic left over from some of the 500 or so masks I made. So that's a good way to hold your scissors. But let me tell you, this is not a good thing to have dangling around your body. I probably ought to get some that are rounded, which you can buy little rounded scissors, I think, for kids. I don't know how sharp they are, though. Or put a sheath on it. What happened is I actually had a sheath, and I don't know why. It was metal and riveted together, and the rivets just broke, and it fell apart. So I'm doing this at my peril today. Now, here I've got this. I sewed it. And in order to make the half square triangles, there you go. See, it's going to look like that. But now you've got a problem because you've got 3 layers, and you probably don't want 3 layers. Now, if I cut this one, then the light layer is on top, and sometimes it shows through. So I think I'll turn it this way, and here we go. There you go. Now, do you see something? That is not good. Apparently I didn't line that up straight. Can you see? It's not quite matching. That is one of the perils of a half square triangle. And I learned this trick. Let me get this trimmed and then I'll tell you the trick. See, I didn't get that lined up on this side. I got it lined up perfectly on this side. But while I was talking to you, I didn't pay that much attention. Anyway, I'm going to go with it because I wanted to show you why. I'm sorry, I'm shaking a little bit. Just bear with me. I've got arthritis, and sometimes I shake not from nerves so much as from back issues. Notice I'm using a big pair of scissors here. I've learned sometimes it's nice to have a big pair and you can just, one or two cuts and you got it. If you have a little, I mean, you could go in here with a little pair if you want to, but see, I'm going to have to cut a lot. So I keep both big and little. Now, what I'm actually doing here is just trimming it to about 1/4 of an inch. It's not that perfect. If you are one of these perfectionists, you can actually set this down and rotary cut it, but I don't usually bother with that. All right. Now, what happened is now I have, instead of 3 layers, I cut that middle layer out. Now, let me explain why. You always want to cut out the middle layer. This one. You do not ever want to count out this one. And I got this from Fons and Porter. That's Liz Fons, Marianne Porter, the really great quilters. They said what happens is this particular square is going to be very true the way you cut it. This one, because of that fold, because I didn't get it quite exactly right, if we went with one of these only, then my whole square would be off. But if I leave this down there, this is what I'm going to use to sew with, is the edge of this. And if this isn't quite right, it's okay. It'll be hidden in the seam. Now, the next thing we do here is we take this and we're going to go to the ironing board now. Always. Okay. Can you see that at all? I don't know. Can you get in here? Press to the dark side. The reason for this is I did that. I trimmed over there and I'm pressing over there because sometimes on the other side, if you get a little thing, if you get something here or a seam allowance here, it'll show. So we want to press to the dark side. And there you have what is called half square triangles. And if you look at it, you've got 2 triangles on 1 square, half square triangles. Now, I know a lot of people do this. In fact, I saw recently that Jenny Dunn had a really great video out on how to do 4 of these at once. The thing is, it doesn't work on this quilt because you never use 4 at one time. On any given flower, you're going to use 3. But then the 4th one is going to be different. So you can't use that method. So this works for me. Now that's my half square triangle. And that's all there is to it. I use a lot of these in my designs because that's how you can help make something look a little bit like a circle. So that's one reason I use them. Now let me go on to the next little tip. That is an ironing tip. We have these and these, just a few of these blocks. In the pattern, you'll see that I used a real pale one. It's more pale than this. It's so pale you almost can't tell it's yellow. It's almost like a little tiny ray of transparent sunshine. And then I switched to a darker yellow for the bigger flowers. And the reason was there was just enough on 1/5 to get 120 of these. And again, I cut it just the same way, did the strips, and then cut them into 1.5 squares. Then you're going to use, for the big one, the biggest flower in the middle, you're going to need like 8 of these. So this, I used a different yellow. In this case, it's a different yellow yet because it's the one that I had left over. Now, something I want to tell you now, because it can drive you nuts. This fabric is almost the same on the front and the back. I think the front is just a tiny bit shinier. It's a good thing if you want to mark it, you can mark it. If you want to sit under a light and figure it out, you can do that. That's fine with me. Actually, they're so similar, I don't think it matters that much. But if you want to try to do that, you can. I tried. Now, I'm showing you right now what you do to these. All of these little yellow squares are going to be folded in half. And the way I'm folding, if you didn't see, the way I'm folding, I think the back has kind of a side. It's sort of a diagonal front. It's a little shinier. It's not diagonal, so that's how you can't see it much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match it here at the corner. If you match it at the corner and then press inward, you'll get a really nice, and it'll be just really. What I actually did in real life is I went ahead and pressed all my, got those all made, because it's, to me, the ironing is not fun, so get it done. I have one more thing to press, and then I'll go back to the sewing. Here's part of the flower. And what did I say? Press to the, with the seam toward the dark always. And I'm going to try to get in there really, get a really nice little press there. I do not like to iron. Frankly, if I have clothes I have to iron, I'm able to. But I do realize it's important to do your, let's call it pressing when you're sewing. And that's going to be half of the flower, and I'm going to show you how to make the little pocket. It's basically, you can make these like the half square triangles and actually sew that seam if you want to. If that makes you happy, actually you can press it first, and then you can open it if you want to, and sew right along that. That's one way of doing it, rather than making a diagonal line. You can actually press it. But I like the pockets. That's where I'm heading to. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the machine. I'm going to show you how to do this. Oh gosh, I feel, here, excuse me, I dropped this square. Trying to be organized, but I dropped this square, and then I need to get this from the sewing machine, and I'll show you what I do here. Do as I say, not as I do. Do not drop your pieces. See if I can set up. Now you want to get this lined up right along the edges. So the big square here has an edge, and the little tiny square has an edge. You want to get it as perfect as possible, because it'll determine where your points are, and you're going to have to match up those points. Okay, as I'm sewing, you're going to see I'm sewing just barely 1/8 of an inch. And if you can't see there, you can probably see here. I did it with black. Please don't use black thread. I'm using that just so that maybe you can see it. Now, the reason I do just 1/4 of an inch is when I sew these together, an 1/8 of an inch. When I sew them together, I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch, and then you're not going to see that at all. It's all going to disappear in the seam. Now, let me just tell you just one more thing about thread while I'm thinking about it. This thread is actually what I used on the quilt. I know sometimes people use tan. I decided that maybe the gray was better. Plus, I had some, this is actually Omni thread from Superior Threads, which I really like a lot. And that's what I used. Now, I'm going to show you a tip here that is helpful for me. Maybe some of you are such great quilters that you always get it right the first time. Unfortunately, I don't seem to be one of those. I try to line this up as well as I can. I look at both sides. Sometimes I put a pin in. And let me just try this and see how it is. And when I say try it, I actually made a basting stitch here. I made a little bit bigger stitch. I'm going to come in and I'm going to sew just a few. Someone asked me recently, or I think it was someone on fabric.com asked, how do you keep your seams straight? And this is one of my tips. Oh, look at that. I think I got it the first time. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go with that. Yay. I was afraid I'd make a mess of it in front of the camera. Okay, that one's okay. So I'm going to just sew it in. I'm going to go back to my regular stitch length, and that one's okay. And now I'm sewing it in. And I think I've got that go. I think I've got one, and there we go. Look at that. We got it. We got it. We got it. But now I got to go back to the ironing board again. This is why I usually have my ironing board like this. This is not my normal sewing space, but I like it down low because I just swivel around. I have an office chair I use, and I swivel around because you have to do this pressing as you go. Oop, I made a mistake, didn't I? I don't know if you saw that, but I went to the light instead of the dark. That's what happens when you get so busy talking. It's easy to make a mistake here. Okay, so I'm going to go in there to get that. And I've got a nice press. Now, this is the typical thing that sewers will tell you is, and this is a typical thing for matching your seams. I'll tell you this is just absolutely important. You know what I just did? I sewed those the wrong edges. No, should be this way. I am now going to cry. You want to see me bawl on TV? Oh, well, you know what? That's when you get out your seam ripper, but I'm not going to seam rip it. I'm just going to go ahead and do this part. What you're going to do is pay attention next time and get these on the side you need them. I am just crushed that I did that in front of an audience, but you know, we all do that. And what I would do in real life, this is not real life, this is fake. So what I would actually do is I would go back and do another set or start a new set and make sure that I got it on the right way around. Oh well, but right now I'm going to show you how to, at least I can match those seams even if I messed up on this part. Just goes to show you can sew for 60 years and still mess up. You're going to do the same thing that I did before. Okay, people, I'm going to purposely mess this one up. I'm going to try to get those together. And if you've got one seam going excuse me, let me say it correctly. One seam allowance this way and the other that way. So you've got it one this way, one this way, one that way. You should be able to get right in there and you should be able to just sew that seam and not worry about it. When you're dealing with just one layer, it works really, really well. But what happens is that occasionally you've got a situation like this where you have a big layer and you're not too sure of yourself. What you can do, or if you're new to sewing and you're not really sure it's all going to match up, you can actually do, and see here, I did this on purpose. I purposely missed this seam because that can happen. And the thing is, if you miss a seam here, it might foul you up later too. So it's better to go ahead and fix it. And if you see, this is where I put basing in first, so it would be fairly easy to take out. Here, didn't want to come out fast. And I could pull it out and do it again. And to me, this helps me so much when I'm trying to match points or where I'm trying to match things that are a little bit more difficult, such as a thick seam. Let's see if I can do this one better. Yeah. Ooh, I've got threads all over the place. On Kathy Quilts, she wears an apron and she throws her thread onto her apron and it catches. I don't know. Okay. Still not right. Well, what do? You find your seam ripper and you do it again. Now, I have to, I have to say that this happens all the time. I'm sorry, but sewing is not, it's never perfection. And you need to know that even people who win awards often have issues. And I'll just throw that away. Okay. This little guy is something you need to know about. This one is Bernina. What you want is the smallest little round blade you can get. Some seam rippers have a bigger blade here and they're harder to use. Some of them are totally flat, which I really don't like that much. I like the small round braid. This one is my favorite, but my sweet husband got me lots of them so that I can keep them around all the time, every place I'm sewing or taking things out or whatever. But I've learned a trick really just this last year. Here is a magnet that holds pins. It also holds a seam ripper. So instead of putting it down beside me, if I throw it on that, it won't hit the floor. So there is a nice little thing for you. Now I'm going to do this one more time, and if it's not right, hey, we might just have to live with it. And that's how real quilting really is. We said this was a follow along, so thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. You're coming, and I hope you'll be going to my Sew Go Create and take a look at some of my other patterns. They're all digital, so you download them and print them. Are we there yet? I think we're there. Now I'm a little bit prouder to show you. I've got a nice match. Now, again, somehow I managed to get these all messed up when I put it together, but there you go. Next time it'll be a little bit more perfect, but just know that we all make mistakes. We all have to rip out. Just be aware of it. Now, I think there are probably other things I could sew for you, but I think those are the two main ones because this particular quilt, let me go back to the quilt and show you again. I'm tripping over some extra wires we have right now. I show you again the quilt. Notice that it has a lot of these half square triangles. That's why I wanted to show it, because in order to make these flowers look round, you have to have the half square triangles on. And then here, so some of them are the color green to make sort of the leaf, but others are between, between a particular color and the next flower. So that's where they are. So there are a lot of half square triangles. And then, as I said, these. Now, why did I make these with the little pockets? It's because I really love that three-dimensional, that little bit of texture. And by making the little pockets, you get a little, you can see in the little pockets, you can see a little bit of shadow in there. And it gives you just a little texture and makes it a little bit easier. Now, one other thing on this quilt is that I did use all the fabric. So I actually used 9-inch pieces. I know. Yeah, let me go back to this and remind you. This is part of one of those fat bibs. So in order to use something that was logical, I did a strip of my 2.5 inches like you normally do for binding. Then from that strip of 2.5 inches, cut it in half. So that what I ended up with was approximately, I don't know, it's like a 9 and a 9.5, something like that. That's one time when the actual exact size doesn't matter how long the length is. But I had 2.5 inches. Line this one up by about 9.5. And I want to show you at least how I put together the binding, because it's not so much that it's tricky. This part went through 4 waves. But what I wanted to do when you want to put a binding together is you put one down, face up. Now, think about it. If you need to sew a seam, you put it face down, right? Only I'm not going to sew a typical seam, because if I did, then this comes up in the binding. When you turn this over and then turn it again, that comes out very thick. I want a diagonal seam. So if you put it perpendicular, and this is when, here, perpendicular, get it? You're looking at that little square, and you're going to just do a diagonal across here. No, that's wrong. Oh, well, I can erase it, right? It'll be with, I think it's this way. Follow, as I say, do what I say, not what I do. And I think I have it this way, and let me show you why. And one of the things you can do with this sort of thing, because you do make mistakes like I did putting that together, if you think, just take this much time, put a pin in it, and flip it. There you go. You know it's going to be right. You know it's going to be right. What you're going to do is you're going to sew along there. And I won't take the time to sew now because we're getting over 45 minutes, which I think is long enough. But what I will do here is cut it. And so after that is sewn, you're going to just trim off a little bit with your scissors probably, so that it's not very long. And I actually will take this and press it open. You don't usually press things open, but this I will, just so I don't have as much thickness in there, so that when you get ready to make this binding, what you've got are these little, right along here, you've got these little angled corners, and the angled ones are just not as thick. And so that's how I put it all together. I just did a whole bunch of these in all the just different colors. That way you can do the binding out of the same fabric. But you might need to do backing fabric. Well, you will have to do it differently because you don't have a piece big enough. However, I designed the quilt so it actually comes out at about 42 inches, meaning you can use one and 3/4 yard of regular backing. You don't have to piece it. So that's good. Do you notice I did raindrops? I don't know if you can see them, but that's what those are. Those are raindrops. I did raindrops to water my flowers, but I also considered something like this, and I found this today, and I thought, oh, that would have been pretty too on the back. Sometimes I like to do a fun backing. And I think that's about all I can tell you, because frankly, there's not. I'll sit here so you can see the quilt instead of me. Oh, don't show my messy quilting. Okay, and that's about it. Thank you. I see Ricardo is coming on, so it looks like he's about ready to take over again. Thank you what I'll do is I will stay on, and we'll look up Facebook and see if there are any questions that came up, and I'll try to get those answered.
Yeah, the questions that were there and comments, I did reply to them. But let's give 5 minutes now for letting people actually ask you questions that you can answer live. Because of course you were sewing, you didn't have time to be looking at the comments. So if anyone has questions, you can leave a comment with a question, and Libby will answer you.
And if I can't get to the answer right now, because the communication is a little bit interesting here. We're working from Portugal and Alabama, and we're working with a new app that neither of us was familiar with. But if you leave them in at the fabrichut.com, I will definitely go back and answer them by typing in if I can't do it today live.
Yeah, and the other thing is I'm really sorry because there were some hiccups with the streaming. The streaming was not the best quality. There was some problems with the sound. This was the first time we did this, and so just like sewing, there are always some problems
Glitches.
that occur that we cannot predict. I'm really sorry for that, and we will do our best for the next one to be more
Ricardo,
better than this one.
Did you tell them that when they buy this particular bundle that they get my 2 patterns free?
Yeah. So when you buy this bundle and you have the link on the comments, we will send you an email with this pattern and the bonus pattern that you can also see on the left there. Okay, so Ruth says thank you.
Okay, I can go over to my computer now and see if I can see anything on that. It blacked out while we were talking.
Yeah. And if no one, let's just give it a bit more time because there is a delay on the streaming.
Okay.
So let's give it just a couple more minutes. If no one else has any questions, we will end.
Well, you know, as I said, this is very easy quilting. I'm sure a lot of people just dropped out because they say, I know how to do that already. And it's just the nature of this particular pattern.
Okay. While we wait, Libby, can you tell us a bit more about yourself? So I know you were an English teacher for 30 years or so. So you are used to speak to an audience, and you are used to teaching, of course. So this should not be hard for you.
It's a little bit strange without an audience to interact with. I've been used to teaching college in a classroom setting, and I'm used to having a chalkboard or not a chalkboard, a whiteboard. But yes, I did teach at about 6 or 7 different universities, most lately here, South University here in Montgomery, Alabama. But the sewing I've done, I've sewn for myself, I've sewn for my house, and along the way I started quilting really when I lived in Montana, because everybody quilted in Montana, and I was working for a little while at a Bernina shop that sold Bernina sewing machines. So I did that for a while. I was a costume. I was actually the costumer in my college, so I've done a little bit of that as well. And when we got to Montgomery, I started entering art shows with photography, and I decided to start doing fabric art as well.
I know you won a national first prize with Bernina.
Oh yeah, that was Make a Man a Vest. Oh my goodness. And it was years ago, but I made the vest and I put on the back, I appliqued mountains with and used thread painting to enhance them. I love to do enhancements. I love to do thread painting. I love to do textural things particularly on my art quilts. So yeah, I do a little bit of that.
If you have a picture of that, we would love to see that.
I actually have the actual thing, but it's in the closet somewhere.
You can
get it right now, but maybe I can put it on later.
If you feel like that, I don't
want I'll put it on fabric.com later.
Yeah.
It's I might have to take a new picture because that's been a few years back when we lived in Montana. But no, I did win that, and I have been on Bernina International. I was on stage with a jacket that was actually, I made it so it was totally reversible, and it had thread painting on it too, and had mountains on the back, and that was pretty spectacular. And I still have that.
Okay.
Most recently, the most recent big prize was in Montgomery at a it is Society of Arts and Crafts has a show called the Water Show, so everything in it has to have water. And I actually excuse me, had a photo quilt of a nearby town, and I had pictures of it, photos of it done in sepia that looked very old. They were my photography, but so they weren't that old. And then I had pictures that were new, and I was showing parts of Tallahassee that were old and new. And then I had I actually quilted in at one of the brick buildings, and then put the photos all over it. And that one actually won Best of Show against real art. So that was exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really great. Okay, as we don't have any more questions, I think
That's
we can
fine.
wrap it up. And I hope everybody liked this presentation as much as we loved doing it. And I hope we can do something similar in the near future. Bye.
Yeah,
all.
we just might do this one, the one above.
Yeah.
To show everybody how to make the yo-yos. We'll see.
And you use the scraps. Yeah.
Keep
Okay.
tuned, everyone. It's a fun place to be. Fabrichut.com. A fun place to be.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Libby. I really appreciate that. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.